Mr. Joshua Burgin. He's a political campaign expert. Joshua, welcome back to TP World. Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure to be here, guys. Thank
you. So, Poland's political alliances. It seems as though it's walking a tightrope between the EU and the US. How do you see that dynamic?
So, I see the following. Poland is a net producer of security. It's enjoyed 30 years of strong economic growth and is positioned to be a leading agent or having a leading role around Ukraine. And as a result, there is value to the U.S. But Poland is also, because of the size of its economy and its importance, again, around Ukraine, it's a key leader in Europe. I think it would be profoundly different if it didn't have the strong economic component. But to the extent of where that is at the moment, you mentioned it is a tight walk. But this is a role that I think Poland is capable of undergoing. As we've just watched the foreign minister's speech, I mean, the foreign minister and his wife have strong ties in both Brussels and Washington, D.C. And if there's any power couple, so to speak, in the world capable of managing that, I think that the minister and his partner are able to do so.
Right.
And I'm really glad that you mentioned it, because in fact now Radosław Sikorski mentioned himself that it is a myth that Poland must choose between close relations either with the EU and the United States. But there is also some really interesting, let's say plot twist here, as with the upcoming American elections. There is a considerable speculation about the potential impact on transatlantic relations and Poland's position on them. So what is your take on this here?
So I was quite shocked a week or so back, when there was apparently some outrage in the media that President Duda had reportedly met with President Trump. Any nation state that isn't sort of maintaining or building connections to both the current administration and a potential future administration is not serving their foreign policy approach as well. So I might not have wanted to appear in the media for this, but the notion that the sitting Polish president would meet with what could be a future American president, or at least connecting with that team, it seems only right and rational to me.
Right. Yeah, it does seem to make sense, does it not? I mean, this is the diplomatic game overall, I would suggest. But so let's follow that line of thinking for a second, Joshua, if we may. Now, what happens then if Trump does win in November? What would you expect his policy towards Ukraine to be?
Well, that's not clear at the moment. I've seen many with sort of what I consider to be fanciful speculation that if Trump's reelected, suddenly Ukraine is lost, Russia wins, it's over.
Right.
I think this is absurd. Firstly, because Russia is not in a strong position at this point. It is, of course, projecting force, but it is it has an economy the size of the state of Texas. It is a shrinking population. Its actions unprovoked, unwarranted, unnecessary. They've sort of gotten themselves into the sticky wicket.
Right.
And the notion that somehow Trump is beholden to them and he's going to sacrifice his own ego in order to elevate Putin, I just can't buy it. Trump, however, is, as his son-in-law wrote in his book, he's unpredictable. So where he's going to go with that, I can't say. I suspect that perhaps he would sort of lay down here's the deal, President Putin, here's the deal, Vladimir, take it or leave it. And, then what the Russians do with that, I don't know. I can easily see a scenario where he lays out this is the deal, Vladimir. Putin comes back and says, no dice. And Trump says, okay, fine. And, increases weapons to Ukraine. Or. It remains to be seen, but I am not one of those that sit in the dark and foreboding camp that just believes the moment that a potential Trump presidency happens, suddenly Ukraine is lost. I just don't buy that.
So unlikely to be a tragic consequence.
Well, I mean, I think it's a tragic consequence all the way around. We're seeing a society decimated. We're seeing cities destroyed. We're seeing, future generations undercut by a needless and senseless war. But on the wider point, I just don't think that there's going to be massive changes in policy from one administration to another, should there be a change. And I think that's a big if at the moment, should there be a change.
Now, coming back from news from the US, coming back to more of a European sphere. Now, in fact, Minister Sikorski mentioned that Poland and Germany, now we do have to bring that to the table, as we do know that in history they were not always friends. And Minister Sikorski mentioned that, well, Poland and Germany do have a different interests, and for years Berlin has pursued a more self-serving approach towards Russia, but Germany is now a democratic neighbour and a key ally in NATO. So how do you think that now perhaps this kind of relationship between Poland and Germany might pan out?
Well, we've watched the foreign minister and this new government reinvigorating the Weimar Triangle, the relationships between Poland, Germany, and France, using that sort of trilateral relationship to achieve certain ends. You're not wrong that Germany had for many years pursued a policy of cheap energy from Russia and had become quite dependent there. That's over. So Germany is not going to be in the position to be quite as dismissive, I believe, and it's going to necessitate stronger ties between the two. And I think this government is well equipped to navigate that. Am I going to like everything they do? No, but is it possible to like everything a government or an administration does anywhere in the world? No. So, I mean, more or less, I don't have any significant concerns. I do have some concerns around Germany's reliance on China and all the spillover effects for the neighboring countries. Poland is a large contributing sort of sub-manufacturer for German industry, and that should be watched, I think, with some care.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's sort of tangential to this conversation here.
Well, it is, and you should come back for a deeper discussion on that.
Fair.
I'd like to introduce now Professor Marek Belka. He's a Polish MEP, and he has just joined us. Welcome, Professor.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So I'm assuming that you watched Mr. Sikorski's speech. What were your overall thoughts on it?
I'm not watching his speech because I'm in Strasbourg vacating my office because this is my last day in Strasbourg. However, I know what are the main issues touched upon by Sikorski, and well, I have some comments on this. So
please share them.
So if you allow me, there's not much of a surprise what he's talking about. We are in a situation in which security of our country, as a matter of fact, security of our region is at stake now, and we should address this issue as the most important one. And of course, in this context, he is probably talking, because I'm not able to watch his speech on live. He will be talking on the security policy of Europe, of European Union, of NATO, and well, these are the burning issues of today. One thing that I bet he will not mention and he will not say is that we need a reform of decision-making process within the European Union. If we stick literally to the unanimity rule in terms, at least, especially in the domain of foreign and security policy, we will always be hostage of outliers like Orban or Fico from Slovakia, and the decision-making process will be slow, and European Union will punch under its weight within NATO. And God knows what happens with NATO, especially if we have this radical change in the White House.
Indeed, indeed. It's certainly been one of the criticisms levelled at the EU that, you know, the need for unanimity in important decision-making is slowing things down unfairly.
Indeed, and now seeing this situation, that will be probably my question to both of you, but first and now to Joshua. So how do you think that, we do know that, of course, we are also approaching now a very important anniversary for Poland. So now 1st of May will mark a 20th anniversary of Poland in the EU. So how do you think that the position of Poland has changed over the years?
Well, the economic growth is probably the key driver. I mean, you have young people today who have no memories of what life was like under communism, have no memories of what it was like, let's say, pre-internet. The world for them is comfortable. They have access to food, travel. These are just things that less than a generation and a half ago were impossible. And Poland is on the leading edge of sort of driving economy, new technologies. Poland is, in my view, the hidden gem of Europe, both in terms of employee base, but also in terms of quality of life.
Right.
I think that's probably the key difference over the last 30 years.
And Professor, how do you see it from your point of view?
Well, one thing I have already mentioned, which is the decision-making process. Second is which is inherent in the nature in the structure of the European Union, that we have global challenges. We have the necessity to face those challenges together. At the same time, politics is national, or let me put it, it's local. So local issues prevail in campaigns, in elections, local narratives, and it's only when a crisis comes then people realize for a short moment that we should act together, and then this is the most important stimulus for the survival and development of the European Union. I don't know whether this addresses your question directly, but this is how I see the process of how the European Union is shaped.
Indeed it is. Joshua, I wanted to talk about another tightrope now, actually. So Poland supports the idea of Ukraine joining the European Union. On the other hand, there's a bit of friction, isn't there, with the Polish farmers and so on. How do you think that Poland's going to be able to navigate that kind of road between the two issues?
Well, I think it's a non-starter for now, and the key reason is Russia has basically invaded, occupied the three nation states that would potentially join NATO. That's Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. The territory is now in dispute, and NATO is not going to accept any member state with a territorial dispute. That said, I know there's been lots of talk. I know Ukraine would like to ascend to NATO, but until the war comes to an end, it's not going to happen. And frankly speaking, even if NATO were to accept Ukraine as of now, it is a net consumer of security, not a net producer. The war needs to come to an end. Ukraine needs to win in order for NATO considerations to be serious, or perhaps in a negotiated settlement between the two countries. If there was perhaps a territories shed in exchange for Russia's non-opposition to NATO ascension, but that's not something we've heard sort of publicly in the last bit.
Well, a very contentious issue, is it not?
Lots of water to go under the bridge before that becomes a real issue.
Absolutely. So, we basically have come almost, I suspect, to the end of our program today. It's been very exciting. We've had some amazing guests. Thank you both for coming along, and we've had lots before as well. Exciting day.
Indeed.
Ms. Skorski's speech, the 20th anniversary of Poland's accession to the EU.